Namaste, beautiful souls. Welcome to the sacred journey of Call Mantra. Embrace divine grace. Let the celestial vibrations uplift your spirit and guide you toward inner peace, abundance, and divine blessings. Open your heart, chant with devotion, and awaken the infinite grace within you.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty intense, a tradition within the Durga Puja festival. And if you think you know the festival mainly as, a celebration of good over evil, prepare for maybe a bit of a revelation, because the actual crafting of the Mother Durga idol involves this step, a step that really forces us to look deeper, way deeper actually, at what we even mean by purity. We're focusing on one specific prerequisite for the idol makers. It's this required ritualistic inclusion of something called punyamati, which literally translates to blessed soil. And it's considered absolutely essential, non-negotiable really, for the idol to be complete.
Right. And the source of this soil, this single most sacred ingredient, that's what makes this such a powerful, maybe even uncomfortable spiritual confrontation. And we're talking about soil taken from the courtyards of the sex workers of Sonagachi, which our sources describe it as Asia's largest red light district.
Yeah.
Right there in North Kolkata. So yeah, it's an uncomfortable reality, but it's spiritually foundational to this tradition. Now, for most people looking from the outside, it's just an interesting cultural detail, a footnote. But our mission today in this deep dive is to really peel back that surface layer. Because for a Kali Sadhaka, someone who's genuinely on this spiritual path, this tradition isn't just interesting. It's an unavoidable lesson. It highlights a really crucial, non-negotiable step on the path to realization. Confronting the ego, conquering the self. It's big.
And the way the ritual itself is done gives us the first clue to its deeper meaning, doesn't it? Like you said, the soil isn't just grabbed on the sly, it has to be begged for. The sources use the term piksha. It must be asked for, requested, and then it has to be physically offered right from the workers' doorways.
Exactly, by your hand.
By your hand. And the tradition is totally clear. Making the Durga idol is incomplete without this specific soil offered by that specific person. When something has that much spiritual weight placed on it by the tradition's founders, well, you have to stop and really try to understand the mechanism, the why behind it. Okay, so let's unpack this. Maybe start where most explanations stop.
Yeah.
The popular cultural reason given for this, it's quite a common theory, almost a bit romanticized maybe, but it just feels like it lacks the spiritual power needed for such a vital ritual.
It does feel insufficient. And I think it's because it really only focuses on the external action, the sort of surface exchange. The common story goes something like this. A man, when he enters the red light district, he leads all his virtues, what the sources call kripa, and his ethical conduct, his kriya. He supposedly leaves them at the threshold, like checking his coat at the door. And the logic then follows that this act of shedding virtue outside the boundary somehow purifies the soil outside that boundary, making it, quote, the most beautiful, blessed soil, as if it's purified by the virtue he just discarded.
So that explanation basically positions the punyamati as just a byproduct of someone else's moral failing. Like, it's this spiritual waste product that just happens to become sacred by accident.
Yeah.
But if we're aiming for real, profound understanding, like a Sataka would, we have to move past that simple purification idea and get to the deeper spiritual context, which connects this whole act to the ultimate battle, right? Mahadurga, the Devi, slaying the demon Mahishasura.
Exactly. To really grasp the profound context, you first have to understand the enemy in this spiritual war. The ritual is fundamentally tied to fighting lust. And lust, in this context, is personified by Mahishasura. Now, our sources describe Mahishasura as having this boon, this protection, which gave him two characteristics that are absolutely crucial for this analogy we're drawing. First, he was physically unbeatable in battle by any male god or force. Only a female energy could face him.
Okay.
Second, and this is really key for our deep dive today, he was impossible to recognize. He was the ultimate master of disguise, constantly shifting shape. The divas, the gods, they could never really pin him down. They just knew he was there, causing chaos, taking over everything, but they couldn't see his true form.
Right, impossible to nail down. And what's so striking is how perfectly that description maps onto the spiritual force that's driving the man to Sonagachi in the first place. Lust. The whole reason for visiting the district at its root is physical desire, seeking satisfaction. And lust, in that deep spiritual sense, is just like Mahishasura, isn't it? It's indescribable. You can't easily define its edges or where it comes from. And it's impossible to recognize because it keeps changing shape. It can wear the mask of love or need or wanting validation or even just boredom or curiosity.
Absolutely.
You can't just point and say, there it is, that's the problem. It's slippery. It hides behind all these societal masks we wear.
And the result of letting that unseen, disguised lust take charge. It's devastating for the spiritual seeker, the Sahaka. Mahishasura wasn't just a troublemaker. He famously took over Devaloka entirely, the realm of the gods, which is a powerful symbol for lust taking over your own inner kingdom of virtue, your own personal Indra's kingdom inside you.
That kingdom inside you, that's where your Kripa lives, the divine grace, the merit you've built up. And your Kriya, your ethical actions, your self-control.
Exactly. Those reside there.
So can you unpack that a bit more? The significance of those two specific things being lost, left at the doorway. Why is that detail so central?
Well, Kripa and Kriya are like the spiritual currency, the energy field of a sadhaka. Kriya is what you carry inside that subtle force field of virtue, of grace received or earned. And Kriya is how you acted out the physical proof of ethical living, of discipline. Now, when the man is out in society performing his duties, he uses Kriya to keep up appearances, right? And he uses Kripa, perhaps, to internally justify things, to feel okay about himself. But lust, the Mahishasura within it, demands this raw, undiluted moment of satisfaction, a moment that's free from the weight of those virtues. The sources seem to suggest that the sheer gravitational pull of that act, of giving in to that raw desire, it actually pulls the Kripa and Kriya out of the man as he commits to crossing that threshold.
Wow. Like he physically can't carry them in there?
He cannot carry the full spiritual weight of his accumulated merit into that specific transaction. It's incompatible. The instant he crosses that line, he is shedding the very essence of his virtuous self. Because the two states, the state of virtue and the state of raw, unchecked lust, cannot coexist in that moment. And this is why the Sathaka, who is constantly giving in, who can't conquer that desire, they can never really reach higher states of realization, because the lust, the Mahishasura, will always overcome and dominate the Deva Tattva, the divine spark within them. It keeps them stuck, essentially, in the state of anashara.
Okay, so if the external virtue, the Kripa and Kriya, are drained away right there at the door, that sets the stage perfectly for the actual confrontation. And this is where it gets really, really fascinating for me. Looking at the man's behavior, the visitor to Sonagachi, as this perfect real-world metaphor for Mahishasura himself in action. Because out in society, as you said, this man might be, a pillar of the community, honorable, respected, completely disguised by his social role.
He's a master of disguise, yes.
Yeah.
But crucially, he's often deceiving himself too. That's part of the disguise. He maintains this internal story that he's fundamentally pious or virtuous despite these urges he acts on. That's the real genius of Mahishasura's camouflage. It works internally too.
Right.
And like the demon who couldn't be recognized, the man often takes steps to avoid recognition, covering his head, his face, maybe traveling at night, trying to preserve the societal lie.
But then comes the moment of truth, the unmasking. And it happens right at the threshold of the worker's home, doesn't it? The sources say when he lands up right at her doorway, he has to shed the disguise. He must. He shows his real face, the raw, undiluted Mahishasura of lust. And they describe him stepping inside in absolute comfort. Why comfort? Because in that specific, private moment, the pretense finally drops.
Yes, he's no longer pretending to himself or worrying about the outside world's judgment. He has, for that instant, fully accepted and embraced the Ashura driving him. That threshold is the spiritual checkpoint. It's the moment everything shifts. The very second he steps over that line, he's finally recognized for exactly what he is in that moment. No more disguise. And the source material really hammers this home. All this kripa, his virtue, is left right there, puddled at the doorway. That becomes the punyamati.
The blessed soil.
That loss of virtue is the critical signal. And the absolute spiritual meaning here is profound. Until that specific, hidden, disguised lust is not absolutely conquered and brought out into the open, Dri, the divine mother, cannot truly be attained.
Okay, but who is doing the recognizing? That seems key, because this whole system of deception works perfectly well with his family, his friends, colleagues. He even fools himself, like you said. Yet the instant he crosses that specific line, boom, the disguise fails. Who sees through it?
The consciousness inside those four walls. That's who. And that consciousness, manifested in the form of the worker, is divine consciousness. It's the Dvitattva. It is chosen to manifest precisely there in that challenging place, that Kalashetra, to do a specific spiritual job.
Object job.
Only this specific manifestation of Dvi has the power, the clarity, the sight to see Mahishasura for what he is. to see the hidden shape-shifting lust behind the man's facade, his true raw desire driving him. Think about it, right? His family is fooled because they see the role he plays, they expect goodness maybe. His colleagues are fooled because he maintains professional appearances. But the worker, as Devi, she isn't invested in his societal status or his reputation. She sees the base impulse, the raw energy that brought him there, completely stripped of all the kripa and kriya he left outside. The disguise of the respectable man is the very first thing that Devi, in this form, needs to shatter to even begin the conquest of the demon.
And the iconography that the source uses to describe what happens next is just stunning. It says Devi, manifested through the worker, is poking and holding Mahishasura with the trident, the Trishula.
Yes.
What does that mean spiritually? Arresting him.
It means the Mahishasura of lust is caught. Arrested, exactly. Held fast for eons, the source says. He's stuck. He can't move his lust forward, can't achieve his aim in that moment, because the Divine Mother, through this consciousness, has identified, pinned down, and conquered that shape-shifting demon within him. That state of being caught, pinned by the trident. That is the spiritual moment of forced surrender, right there. It is Dvi manifesting in that specific consciousness and destroying, or at least neutralizing, the lust within that man in that instant. And this confrontation, this pinning down, is what allows the Devatattva, the divine essence, and the Kriya, the virtuous action, all that stuff that was being lost, the Indra's kingdom the Mahishasura was taking over, it allows it to eventually be reclaimed.
Because the demon is caught.
Yes. The man's momentary physical interaction comes partnered with this profound spiritual confrontation that arrests his Asura nature.
Okay, so the deception is broken at the door, the demon is momentarily caught. Now let's talk about the sheer audacity, almost, of saying the actual dirt from that spot, that point of defeat, is the crucial missing piece for the mother's own idol. Let's really deepen this. Why is the soil taken from this specific confrontation site absolutely essential? Why does the physical clay need the mud from this spiritual battlefield?
This is where it gets really profound, where the physical and spiritual just merge completely. It's the core teaching, I think. The deeper meaning is this. Unless you make earth, unless you make mud of that physical lust within you, the Divi Tattva cannot fully rise.
Make mud of it.
Meaning it has to be confronted, battled, surrendered, killed, essentially. Transformed from raw energy into conquered earth. Inert potential. Divi arises from the depth, the absolute surrender of that specific form of lust. That soil, the Punyamati, it represents that surrendered, conquered lust. It's like the spiritual ashes from that inner fire. It is the physical proof that the internal battle was fought, and at least for that moment, won. The source is telling us. Until you don't fully surrender that physical lust, until you haven't allowed that Mahishasura within to be exposed and metaphorically killed, and until the very essence of that conquered demon is made into mud, the Divine Mother cannot fully manifest. Not within you, and not in the idol being crafted in her image. The Dvi idol is literally built upon the foundation of the death of the primary demon she exists to conquer.
Wow. Okay, so the Punyamati is like the foundational trauma that's been overcome, the conquered shadow that's actually necessary for the light to fully emerge and shine.
It's beautifully put, yes. It's the conquered shadow integrated into the foundation.
And let's not forget the twist for Mahishasura himself in this. We usually just think of his slaying as, game over, demon defeated, end of story. But the source suggests something else happens to him in that moment of defeat, that he also gets something out of it.
He does, because in that moment of being caught, pinned, dying, he is finally seeing Guvi in her true divine form, not through the distorted lens of his desire.
Ah, okay.
When he's held by the trident, he's forced to look beyond the physical, beyond the flesh he was driven by. His own disguise is shattered, his driving force is neutralized. And in that raw moment of defeat and surrender, he's seeing the Divine Mother not as an object of conquest, but as pure, radiant divine consciousness. It's a moment of forced, pure spiritual recognition for him too.
So the defeat of the Asura is also his own unexpected moment of spiritual insight, maybe even ascent.
Exactly. It's the ultimate lesson in surrender, isn't it? Even the enemy, through the act of battling the mother and being defeated, finds a path to realization. It's mind-bending.
Okay, now back to that critical ritual step we mentioned earlier. The worker must offer the mud. The idol maker, the sculptor, can't just scoop it up and leave. It has to be given by her hand. The power dynamic there feels completely inverted from the usual expectation, right? The man comes thinking he's the one with the power, the customer. But spiritually, he's the one who's been caught. He's the prey, pinned by the worker, manifesting as Divi.
Precisely. She is the one, in that context, who kills the Mahishasura within those four walls. Therefore, she alone, as the divine manifestation of the mother, maybe specifically the Kali aspect here, the fierce slayer, she alone has the right to that mud. Because that mud is the physical residue, the trophy, if you like, of the conquered lust.
She earned it.
She earned it. She's the divine consciousness that took the shape of that worker for that purpose. And she validates the spiritual conquest by offering its physical proof, its essence. And remember why only she can do this. She sees the demon when absolutely no one else does. Not his wife, not his kids, not his business partners, not his friends. He's a master of disguise everywhere else in his life.
Total compartmentalization.
Completely. Yeah. But in that specific Kalakshetra, that field of Kali, he has to drop the mask. He cannot maintain it there. This town, this specific district, this reality, it exists from this spiritual perspective for this exact ongoing spiritual function. Every single time the man walks in, if he is killing it, the source uses that repetition.
Killing the lust.
Killing the Mahishasura within him. If that lust arises and brings him there 1,000 times, the mother will manifest and slay it 1,000 times, right inside that specific consecrated space. That constant confrontation is the ongoing spiritual reality of that location, according to this interpretation.
That completely transforms the narrative, doesn't it? It means the most sacred, the most essential, the non-negotiable piece of the Durga idol. It comes directly from this place of relentless spiritual warfare, a place society looks at and labels as impure, maybe sinful, but which this spiritual tradition recognizes as the ultimate crucible. The testing ground where the inner lies are finally exposed and the divine confrontation happens over and over. The mother's image literally cannot be completed until the evidence of the demon's recurring death is mixed into her very clay. Okay, this is huge. So how do we take this incredibly complex, layered, beautiful spiritual concept and make it practical, make it actionable for you, the listener, living in the modern world? We're talking about dealing with temptation, with hidden desires, with our own internal Mahishasura, especially today when triggers are everywhere on your phone, ads, social media, just everywhere. How does this translate?
Well, the first step, and the source material is really strong on this, is we have to confront the two main ways Mahishasura keeps us trapped. The two great forms of deception that block realization.
Okay, what are they?
Number one is self-deception. This is the lie we tell ourselves, pretending those lusty thoughts, those desires don't exist, or saying, oh, I'm pious, I don't look at things like that, or those thoughts aren't really mine, they just popped in.
Right, the denial.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is incredibly dangerous because Mahishasura, the master of disguise, has actually convinced the person they are virtuous, even while the desire is secretly running the show inside. Today, this looks a lot like compartmentalization, doesn't it? Believing the lust you chase online or the validation you crave is somehow totally separate from your real or spiritual life.
Yeah, I see that. And number two?
Number two is societal deception. This is the man covering his face when he goes to the district, is the pretense we put on for others, acting pure, acting clean, to convince society we're pious or under control. In modern life, maybe this is crafting that perfect moral online persona while secretly seeking satisfaction or validation in hidden corners of the internet or our minds.
The curated self versus the real self.
Precisely. And the metaphor shows he can keep that face covered right up until the doorstep. But the moment he crosses the threshold seeking satisfaction, bam, all that carefully curated kripa, that outward virtue, is dropped, left outside. And you can't just pick those virtues back up unchanged if you haven't actually conquered the demon inside. The kingdom is still being ruled by the Asura. So the key sadhana, the core practice that comes out of this, is a call to absolute surrender and immediate realization. Stop the denying, stop the pretending. You have to consciously allow Mahishasura to be conquered when he appears. The battle has to be faced, not avoided.
Okay, but the practice can't involve physically going to a doorway every time a tempting thought pops up. How do you actually do that? How do you execute that immediate spiritual practice the moment temptation arises? When Mahishasura shows up in a fleeting thought or an image on your screen or just in your imagination?
The practice, according to the sources guiding this understanding, is immediate and conscious invocation. Recognition and invocation. The very moment a lusty thought or desire arises, doesn't matter if it's from a notification, an image flashing past on the street, a scene in a movie, a memory, or just pure imagination, you must immediately invoke the mother. Say internally Jai Ma, or invoke your guru, whatever your connection is.
Not push the thought away.
No. Crucially, you must not try to deny the thought, or distract yourself, or quickly change the subject in your mind. That's avoiding the battle. That's letting Mahishasura win by default. You face it directly by immediately bringing in the divine feminine power, invoking her presence to slay the demon right then and there. And this invocation, this immediate turning towards the divine, triggers the fundamental shift in perception that the Sataka needs. You have to realize in that instant that whatever generated the thought, the image, the person, the situation, the desire itself is D. It is the Divine Mother manifesting specifically in that form to kill the Mahishasura within you.
Whoa, okay, so the trigger is the goddess.
The trigger is the goddess arriving for battle. She has appeared in that exact context to destroy that specific configuration of desire that is currently blocking your path, holding back your realization.
That completely reframes it. So instead of seeing temptation as a personal failure or a sign of weakness or like you're backsliding spiritually, you see it as a direct, maybe even custom-made opportunity provided by the Divine Mother herself for your growth.
Yes.
The moment of temptation is actually the battlefield she has chosen for your next step.
Exactly. That's why the source says the work of Devi kills it 1,000 times if needed, because the opportunity arises again and again. So the practice is you surrender the entire moment, the thought, the feeling, the image, the desire, immediately and consciously to her. The internal declaration becomes something like, this moment, this desire is surrendered entirely to you, Ma. I recognize your presence. I realize Mahishasura is being killed right now by your manifestation. If this happens 100 times a day, you perform this conscious surrender and recognition 100 times a day. You allow her to slay the Asura each and every time. This is how you create your own internal punyamati, the sacred soil from your own conquered desires.
And the ultimate result of doing this consistently, what does that lead to?
This active realization, this conscious surrender in the face of temptation is what yields the higher states. Detachment, expanded consciousness. When you operate through this understanding, you start to see the manifestation of Devi, whether it appears as a captivating woman, or a beautiful object, or a powerful image, not just through stula, not just as the gross physical body or form, but you start to perceive the pure consciousness, the Devi Tattva, shining through it. You see the source, not just the manifestation. And that act of seeing correctly naturally lifts you higher. And what about the lost virtue, the kingdom of Indra, the Kripa and Kriya that were supposedly lost at the threshold?
Yeah, does that come back?
He gets returned by Devi after Mahishasura is slain in that moment. When you successfully conquer the lust by consciously surrendering it to the mother, you immediately reclaim the spiritual energy, the virtue, the clarity that was being held captive by that disguised demon. The loss at the threshold was temporary, conditional on the demon ruling. The spiritual realization gained through the surrender is permanent. The kingdom is restored.
This has been quite the deep dive. It completely shifts the understanding, doesn't it? That the single most sacred, non-negotiable ingredient for creating the image of the Divine Mother comes from a place society deems impure. Precisely because that place is paradoxically the recognized site where our deepest inner deception is finally repeatedly broken, where the divine confrontation is ritualized and happens constantly. It's this profound spiritual lesson that true purity, true divinity, actually arises from confronting, surrendering, and slaying our deepest, most disguised impurities.
Absolutely. The whole logic of the Punyamati ritual points to this. Every thought, every feeling, even the ones we judge as base or unwanted, is a form of consciousness manifesting.
Yeah.
And it's offering an opportunity. Ignoring that internal battle, pretending it's not happening through self-deception, that just delays your spiritual progress enormously. You're essentially just allowing Mahishasura to sit on the throne of your inner kingdom unchallenged while you pretend everything's fine.
So the lesson ultimately is about courage. The courage to embrace the manifestation of the feminine, the divine, especially when it appears in forms that challenge us, trigger us, and letting that very moment of challenge become the moment of surrender, the moment of slaying that lifts us higher towards realization.
I think that's it precisely. Which brings us to a final provocative thought, something for you to really consider as you go about your life. Based on everything we've explored today, the next time a lustful thought arises, and it will for all of us, try viewing it not as your personal weakness, not as a failure or something shameful, but see it just for a moment as an opportunity. An opportunity provided by Devi herself, manifesting in that exact form, arriving specifically to slay the Mahishasura within you, and in doing so, return your highest spiritual virtues, your lost kingdom. Jai Ma.
That is definitely something to sit with. A powerful deep dive. Thank you for listening.
Struggling with health, financial worries, wealth, relationships, or career? Don't let these challenges hold you back. Harness the ancient power of authentic Rudraksha, planetary remedies, and Vedic astrology to restore balance and attract success. But act fast. These sacred remedies are in limited stock. Visit callmantra.com today to transform your life.
If this resonated with you, join our spiritual journey. Your support keeps us growing. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So like, comment, share with friends, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.